Every day a millionaire left flowers on his wife's grave, consumed by the pain of loss. But on her birthday, a child says something that makes him tremble. "Sir, that woman came here today." Shocked, he follows the girl's clues, and what he finds is shocking. The Boston rain fell relentlessly, turning Evergreen Cemetery into a landscape of glistening gray stone and muddied pathways. Maxwell Reed stood motionless before the elegant marble headstone, his 6-foot frame unmoved by the downpour. Raindrops mingled with what might have been tears as they streamed down his angular face. The inscription was simple: Catherine Elizabeth Reed, beloved wife, forever missed. The date marked exactly 1 year since her passing. Maxwell's visits had become a ritual, a clockwork pilgrimage every Sunday morning, regardless of weather, business obligations, or his own deteriorating health. Today was different. Today marked the first anniversary of the car accident that had claimed Catherine's life on the winding coastal road of Cape Cod. "Some say time heals all wounds," Maxwell whispered to the stone. They lied, Kitty Cat. He placed a bouquet of white peonies at the base of the headstone, Catherine's favorites. The childhood nickname he used was their secret, a term of endearment only spoken when they were alone. At 52, Maxwell Reed was one of Boston's most influential business figures. Reed Technologies had revolutionized medical imaging systems, saving countless lives while making him one of Massachusetts' wealthiest individuals. But wealth meant nothing in the face of loss. The mansion in Beacon Hill stood empty and cold, despite the staff's best efforts. His executive assistant, Diane, had practically forced him to eat for months after the funeral. The rain intensified, but Maxwell remained, lost in conversation with a ghost. This was his pattern. He would spend an hour recounting his week, speaking to Catherine as if she could hear. Today he had brought her favorite chocolate-covered strawberries, wrapped carefully in plastic to protect them from the elements. "Mr. Reed?" The small voice startled him. Maxwell turned to find a girl, no older than 12, huddled beneath a tattered umbrella. Her sneakers were worn thin, and her jacket, several sizes too large, hung from her thin frame. "I'm sorry to bother you," the girl said, her eyes darting between Maxwell and the grave. "But are you Mr. Reed, the one who makes the special cameras for hospitals?" Maxwell nodded, instinctively reaching for his wallet, assuming she was asking for money. "I'm not begging, sir," the girl said quickly, noticing his movement. "My name's Abby Martinez. I sell candy at Fernwood Park to help my grandma with her medicine. But I wanted to tell you something important." Maxwell's patience was thin. This day was sacred to him. "What is it?" he asked, his tone clipped. Abby shifted uncomfortably. "It's about your wife, sir." The words hung in the rain-filled air. Maxwell's expression hardened. "That's not appropriate, young lady." "I saw her yesterday," Abby continued, undeterred. "She bought candies from me. 3 packs of those chocolate-covered strawberry ones." Maxwell froze. Catherine's favorite treat, the same ones he had brought to her grave today, was hardly common knowledge. "She called them her guilty pleasure," Abby added. "Said something about how Kitty Cat deserves a treat sometimes." The nickname landed like a physical blow. Maxwell grabbed the girl's shoulders, perhaps too roughly. "Who put you up to this? Is this some sick joke?" Abby didn't flinch. "Nobody, Mr. Reed, I swear. She had dark hair with that silver streak on the right side. She wore a blue pendant necklace shaped like a teardrop. She walks with her right hand touching things like she's afraid to lose her balance." Maxwell's grip loosened. The silver streak had appeared in Catherine's hair after chemotherapy 5 years ago. The necklace was his gift on their 15th anniversary, and the habit of touching surfaces that had started after her inner ear surgery. These weren't details someone could easily know. "This isn't possible," he whispered, more to himself than to the girl. "She's different now," Abby continued. "She calls herself Ellen, but it's her, Mr. Reed, I'm sure of it." Maxwell stepped back, his mind racing through possibilities. A look-alike, a cruel prank, a hallucination born from grief. Yet the girl's earnest expression held no malice. Where? It was all he could manage to say. Oakwood Heights. The apartment complex past the train tracks. Abby hesitated. "I can show you, but my grandma needs her heart medicine. It costs $87 and we're still short." Maxwell pulled out his wallet and handed the girl several $100 bills without counting. "Take me there, now." As they walked toward his black Lincoln Navigator parked at the cemetery entrance, Maxwell failed to notice a man watching from behind a nearby mausoleum, a German shepherd sitting obediently at his side. The drive to Oakwood Heights revealed a different Boston than the one Maxwell inhabited. Abby directed him through neighborhoods where luxury high-rises gave way to crumbling apartment buildings and corner stores with barred windows. Maxwell learned that Abby lived with her grandmother, Maria Martinez, who was raising her after her parents had left for California years ago, promising to send for her but never returning. "Grandma's heart is bad," Abby explained. "I sell candy after school and on weekends. The doctors say she needs surgery, but we can't afford it." Maxwell nodded absently, his mind still processing the impossible claim about Catherine. As they approached Oakwood Heights, Maxwell noticed the girl studying him. "You don't believe me," she stated simply. "It's not that I don't believe you saw someone," Maxwell replied carefully. "But my wife, we buried her. I identified her body myself," Abby shrugged. "I'm just telling you what I saw, Mr. Reed. When she bought the candies, she talked to me for a while, asked about school and stuff. She seemed sad when I told her about Grandma. She gave me an extra $10 and said to keep it for the medicine fund." The gesture sounded like Catherine, always generous, especially with children. The Navigator looked painfully out of place as it pulled up to Oakwood Heights, a dingy collection of 4-story brick buildings with cracked sidewalks and overflowing dumpsters. Residents eyed the luxury vehicle suspiciously from behind worn curtains. "She lives in Building C," Abby said, pointing to the farthest structure. "Apartment 3B. I followed her once because she reminded me of a teacher I liked. That's how I know." Maxwell's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You're certain?" "Yes, sir. And there's a little boy with her, about 9 years old. He has eyes just like hers, that weird blue-green color." Maxwell felt the world tilt beneath him. They never had children. Catherine's cancer treatment had made that impossible. Before he could question the girl further, his phone rang. It was Diane reminding him about the board meeting scheduled for that afternoon. "Cancel everything," he instructed. "Family emergency." Abby was watching him with an expression too mature for her years. "Are you going to go up there now?" Maxwell considered his options. If, by some miraculous circumstance, Catherine was alive, barging in unannounced seemed reckless. If this was an elaborate hoax, he needed to understand the motive. "Not yet," he decided. "I need to think." "We could watch from across the street," Abby suggested. "She usually takes the boy to the playground around 4. That's when I sell most of my candy there." Maxwell checked his watch. 2:37 p.m. "We'll wait." They sat in silence for nearly an hour, the luxury SUV's tinted windows providing some privacy. Maxwell tried to process the implications of what the girl had told him. If Catherine was alive, it meant she had deliberately abandoned him, staged her death, and hidden away in poverty. None of it made sense. At 3:52, the front door of Building C opened. Maxwell's heart stopped. A woman emerged, holding a young boy's hand. Her hair was shorter, dyed a darker brown, but the silver streak remained. She wore simple jeans and a gray sweater, instead of the designer clothes she once favored. Even from a distance, her gait was unmistakable. The slight hesitation before each step, a remnant of her balance issues. It was Catherine. His Catherine, who he had mourned for a year, whose body he had identified in the morgue after the accident, whose funeral had been attended by hundreds, whose clothing still hung in their closet because he couldn't bear to remove it. "That's her," Abby whispered. Unnecessarily, Maxwell couldn't speak. He watched as Catherine, or her identical twin, led the boy toward the small playground across from the apartment complex. The child had her eyes, the distinctive Reed family trait that had passed through generations. "I told you," Abby said quietly. "Are you okay, Mr. Reed? You look like you're going to be sick." Maxwell finally found his voice. "Who is the boy?" Abby shrugged. "I don't know. I just see them together sometimes." She calls him Noah. Noah. Not a name they had ever discussed for their hypothetical children. Maxwell reached for the door handle, then hesitated. What would he say? How does one begin a conversation with a spouse they buried? The questions multiplying in his mind were interrupted by movement in his peripheral vision. The same man from the cemetery was standing across the street, the German shepherd still at his side. This time Maxwell was certain he was watching them. Maxwell sat frozen in the driver's seat, his eyes fixed on Catherine, or the woman who bore her uncanny resemblance. The boy Noah ran ahead to the swings while she settled on a bench, pulling out a paperback novel. Even her posture as she read was achingly familiar. "She does that every day," Abby said, breaking the tense silence. "Sits and reads while he plays. Sometimes she helps other kids on the monkey bars, too." "This can't be happening," Maxwell whispered. He had spent countless hours with grief counselors who assured him that denial was normal, that he might imagine seeing Catherine in crowds or hearing her voice. But this was different. This was flesh and blood. "What are you going to do?" Abby asked. Maxwell didn't answer immediately. His mind raced through possibilities, each more implausible than the last. Had Catherine faked her death? If so, why? Their marriage hadn't been perfect, but they had loved each other deeply. At least he thought they had. "I need to talk to her," he finally decided, "but not here. Not with the boy." "She works at Preston's Diner on Tuesdays and Thursdays," Abby volunteered. "Night shift. I see her sometimes when I'm selling candy outside." Maxwell turned to look at the girl fully for the first time. Her dark eyes held wisdom beyond her years, but there was something else there, hope. "You've been watching her for a while, haven't you?" Abby nodded. "She's nice to me. Gives me extra tips. Once, when some boys tried to steal my candy money, she scared them away." She didn't know I knew who she was, though. "Not until I saw your picture in the newspaper last month. The article about the new wing at the children's hospital." Maxwell remembered the photo, him standing stoically at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, his first public appearance since Catherine's passing. The caption had mentioned his tragic loss. "Abby," he said carefully, "why did you decide to tell me this today of all days?" The girl fidgeted with the zipper of her oversized jacket. "My grandma needs that heart operation. The doctors say she doesn't have much time without it. I thought, maybe you could help us and I could help you." The simple transaction, information in exchange for assistance, was laid bare. Maxwell couldn't fault the child for her pragmatism. In her circumstances, he might have done the same. "I'll help your grandmother regardless," Maxwell said. "But I need to know everything you've observed about her." As Abby recounted her interactions with Ellen, Maxwell's attention was divided between her story and the playground. The man with the German Shepherd had disappeared, but Maxwell couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He made a mental note to call Ray, his head of security, once he was alone. The afternoon light began to fade, and Catherine, Ellen, gathered her things. She called to Noah, who reluctantly abandoned the swings. Maxwell slouched down in his seat as they passed near the navigator on their way back to the apartment building. "I want to see where your grandmother lives," Maxwell said, starting the engine once Catherine and the boy were safely inside their building. "I'll arrange for a medical consultation tomorrow." Abby directed him to a small house in disrepair about a mile from Oakwood Heights. The paint was peeling, and the tiny yard was overgrown, but someone had carefully planted marigolds around the front steps. "Grandma likes flowers," Abby explained as they pulled up. "She used to be a gardener for rich people before her heart got bad." Inside, the Martinez home was clean but sparse. Maria Martinez, a petite woman in her 70s, sat in a worn armchair, an oxygen tank beside her. Her eyes widened in alarm when Maxwell entered behind Abby. "Abuela, this is Mr. Reed," Abby announced. "He's going to help with your heart surgery." Maria began speaking rapidly in Spanish, clearly distressed by the stranger's presence. "She wants to know what I promised you," Abby translated, looking embarrassed. "She's worried I did something wrong." Maxwell stepped forward and addressed Maria directly. "Your granddaughter has done nothing wrong, Mrs. Martinez. I'm Maxwell Reed. I own Reed Technologies. We manufacture medical equipment, and I have connections at Massachusetts General. I'd like to arrange a consultation for you with a cardiac specialist," Abby translated, and Maria's expression shifted from suspicion to cautious hope. "Why?" she asked simply in accented English. Maxwell considered his answer carefully. "Abby has been helpful to me. I believe in repaying kindness." After some negotiation, including Maxwell's insistence that they accept his driver picking them up for the hospital appointment the next day, he prepared to leave. Abby walked him to the door. "Will you go to the diner tomorrow night?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Maxwell replied, "but I need you to promise not to tell anyone about this." Not even your grandmother. It could be complicated. Abby nodded solemnly. I promise. But Mr. Reed, be careful with the man with the dog. I think he's been watching her too. I've seen him near the candy stand in the park before. The warning sent a chill down Maxwell's spine. What man? The one from the cemetery. Just I don't know if it's the same one. This guy has a scar on his hand, like a burn. He pretends to be walking his dog, but he watches her apartment a lot. Maxwell made another mental note to have Ray investigate. Thank you for telling me, Abby. Lock your doors tonight. Back in his Beacon Hill mansion, Maxwell paced the study restlessly. The rational part of his brain insisted this was an elaborate con, perhaps a woman who looked like Catherine targeting him for financial gain. But his heart recognized her, the silver streak in her hair, the way she touched her temple when concentrating, the distinctive eyes the boy had inherited. He pulled out the police report from the accident. Catherine's BMW had veered off the coastal road and plunged into the Atlantic. The car had been recovered, but the body was initially missing, presumed swept out to sea. 3 days later, remains matching Catherine's description had washed ashore several miles down the coast. Dental records had confirmed the identification. Dental records could be falsified, Maxwell realized, but why would Catherine do this? They had been happy. At least, he thought they had been. He opened his laptop and searched for Preston's Diner. It was a 24-hour establishment in a working-class neighborhood, the kind of place that served truckers and night shift workers. According to the website, it had been in business for over 30 years. Maxwell checked the staff directory, but there were no photos, just a list of names. Ellen Lewis was listed as a waitress. Maxwell called Ray Dawson, his head of security. Ray had been with him for 15 years. Originally hired as a driver, before Maxwell recognized his exceptional skills and promoted him to oversee all security operations for Reed Technologies. I need surveillance on a woman named Ellen Lewis, Maxwell instructed. She works at Preston's Diner and lives at Oakwood Heights, Building C, Apartment 3B. Be discreet. And I need background information on a man who frequents the area. Middle-aged, walks a German Shepherd, has a distinctive burn scar on his hand. What's this about, sir? Ray asked, professional but concerned. It's personal, Ray. I'll explain when I have more information. After hanging up, Maxwell retrieved a locked box from his safe. Inside were keepsakes from his life with Catherine. Photos, love letters, her favorite earrings. Beneath these, he found what he was looking for. A small vial containing a strand of Catherine's hair, saved when she had cut it short during chemotherapy. He called a private laboratory he had worked with during Reed Technologies' development phase. I need a DNA comparison, he told the director. Discreetly, I'll bring the reference sample tomorrow. The second sample will be collected from a restaurant, a coffee cup or utensil. Next, Maxwell contacted Michael Fernandez, his personal attorney and one of his oldest friends. Michael had handled all the legal aspects after Catherine's death, the estate, the insurance, the funeral arrangements. I need to discuss something sensitive, Maxwell said when Michael answered. Can you come over tonight? Michael arrived an hour later, briefcase in hand. He listened in stunned silence as Maxwell recounted the day's events. Max, do you realize what you're suggesting? Michael asked when he finished. If Catherine faked her death, there are serious legal implications. Insurance fraud, for one, not to mention the emotional toll on you and everyone who mourned her. I know, Maxwell replied, but I have to be sure. I need to know why. Michael ran a hand through his graying hair. If, and that's a big if, this is Catherine, have you considered that she might be in danger? People don't fake their deaths for trivial reasons. The thought had occurred to Maxwell, especially after Abby's warning about the man with the dog. That's why I'm having Ray look into it. Be careful, Max, Michael advised. If someone went to these lengths to create a new identity, they might not want to be found. And if Catherine truly wanted to leave you, confronting her might not give you the closure you're seeking. Maxwell stared out the window at the Boston skyline, lights twinkling in the darkness. I have to know, Michael. I've spent a year talking to a headstone. If she's alive, I deserve to know why she left. After Michael departed, Maxwell couldn't sleep. He sat in Catherine's reading nook, where her presence still lingered in the carefully arranged pillows and dog-eared books. Had it all been a lie? The 19 years of marriage? The battles through her cancer? the plans they'd made for the future, and the boy Noah. The timing would make him about 9 years old, conceived before he and Catherine had met. Had she hidden a child all these years? From him, from everyone? As dawn broke, Maxwell made his decision. He would go to the diner that night and confront Catherine, or Ellen as she now called herself. He would demand answers, no matter how painful. What Maxwell didn't know was that Ray's preliminary research had already uncovered something disturbing. The man with the German Shepherd was named Victor Sullivan, a former boyfriend of Catherine's from before her marriage to Maxwell. Sullivan had a history of domestic violence complaints, though none had resulted in convictions. More concerning was his recent activities: multiple cash withdrawals, a newly purchased prepaid phone, and a rental car that had been spotted near Oakwood Heights. Preston's diner sat under the glow of a flickering neon sign, its windows steamed from the heat within. Maxwell parked his Navigator a block away and sat watching the entrance. He'd dressed down for the occasion, jeans and a navy sweater instead of his usual tailored suit, hoping to attract less attention in this working-class neighborhood. At 9:17 p.m., she appeared. Catherine, Ellen, emerged from a city bus, pulling a faded jacket tighter around her shoulders as she hurried toward the diner. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, the silver streak still visible despite the dimness of the streetlights. Maxwell's heart contracted painfully as he watched her. A year of grieving, of speaking to her memory, and now she was walking, breathing, living a separate existence just miles from their home. He gave her 5 minutes to settle into her shift before entering the diner. The bell above the door announced his arrival, but Catherine was in the back, out of sight. Maxwell chose a booth with a clear view of the entire restaurant and picked up a laminated menu. Coffee to start? A waitress with a name tag reading Doreen approached his table. Yes, thank you. His voice sounded strained even to his own ears. Ellen will be your server tonight. She'll be right with you. Maxwell nodded, unable to form words. His hands, usually steady in even the most high-pressure business negotiations, trembled slightly as he pretended to study the menu. Then she was there, notepad in hand, wearing a blue uniform with Ellen embroidered above the pocket. She didn't look up immediately. Welcome to Preston's. Have you decided, or do you need a few more? The words died on her lips as their eyes met. The color drained from her face. The notepad slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. Max, she whispered, the nickname striking him like a physical blow. For an endless moment, they stared at each other. Up close, Maxwell could see subtle differences, lines of strain around her eyes, a scar near her temple that hadn't been there before, a thinness to her frame that spoke of financial struggle rather than the health-conscious diet she'd once maintained. You're alive. It was all he could say, the words emerging as a hoarse accusation. Catherine, Ellen, glanced frantically around the diner. Only a few customers occupied tables, all absorbed in their meals or phones. You can't be here, she hissed, bending to retrieve her notepad. You need to leave now. Maxwell remained seated. A year, Catherine. I've mourned you for a year. Her eyes darted to the kitchen doors, then back to him. Please, Max, not here. Not now. When then? When were you planning to tell me you hadn't actually died in that accident? That I've been visiting an empty grave every Sunday? A middle-aged customer at the counter glanced over curiously. Catherine forced a smile in their direction before turning back to Maxwell. My shift ends at 2 a.m., she said, voice barely audible. There's a coffee shop 3 blocks east that's open all night. Meet me there at 2:30. I'm not leaving until I get answers. Then, order something and wait quietly, please. The Bombach last word held a note of desperation that finally penetrated Maxwell's anger. He nodded stiffly. I'll have the club sandwich and more coffee. Catherine scribbled the order and hurried away, disappearing into the kitchen. Through the service window, Maxwell could see her bracing herself against a counter, head bowed, shoulders shaking. He felt a confusing mixture of fury, relief, and heartbreak. The hours crawled by. Maxwell nursed his coffee, watching Catherine move between tables with practiced efficiency. She avoided his gaze, but remained hyper-aware of his presence, her shoulders tense whenever she passed his booth. Twice he saw her check her phone anxiously. At 1:45 a.m., the diner emptied except for Maxwell and a truck driver dozing in a far corner. Catherine approached his table cautiously. I can leave early tonight, she said, voice low. Doreen will cover my last hour. There's a park behind the coffee shop I mentioned. It's more private. Maxwell nodded, leaving $100 bill on the table, far more than his meal had cost. Outside, the night had grown cold. Catherine walked ahead of him, glancing over her shoulder periodically, her pace quick. Are you checking for me or someone else? Maxwell asked, catching up to her. She didn't answer, leading him to a small pocket park hidden between buildings. A single street lamp cast dim light over empty benches. Catherine chose one partially obscured by shadows and sat, wrapping her arms around herself. Maxwell remained standing. Start talking. Catherine, he couldn't think of her as Ellen, exhaled shakily. I don't even know where to begin. The beginning would be appropriate, or perhaps the accident that apparently never happened. She flinched at his tone. It happened. I just wasn't in the car. Clearly, Maxwell said coldly. Who was? Her name was Patricia Winters. She was a terminal cancer patient at the clinic where I volunteered. She had no family, no one to claim her body. She knew about my plan and agreed to help. Maxwell felt sick. You used a dying woman's body to fake your death? Do you have any idea what I went through? Identifying what I thought were your remains? Planning your funeral? Tears spilled down Catherine's cheeks. I'm sorry, Max. I never wanted to hurt you. Then why? He demanded. Why would you put me through that hell? Catherine's gaze dropped to her hands, which twisted anxiously in her lap. The boy you saw, Noah, he's my son. I gathered that much. What I don't understand is why you kept him secret. Why you didn't tell me about him during our 19 years of marriage. Because of Noah's father, Catherine whispered. Victor Sullivan? We dated before I met you. He was controlling. When I discovered I was pregnant, I tried to leave him. He threatened to take Noah away, said he'd make sure I never saw my baby again. I ran, changed my name from Elizabeth Carter to Catherine Wilson. That's the name I was using when we met. Maxwell sank onto the bench beside her, struggling to reconcile this new narrative with the life they'd shared. You've been living under a false identity our entire relationship. No, she said quickly. Catherine Reed became my legal name when we married, but Victor never stopped looking for Elizabeth Carter and his son. Last year he found us, and your solution was to fake your death rather than tell me. Maxwell's voice rose in disbelief. He said he would take Noah and hurt you if I didn't pay him, Catherine continued. I gave him money at first, from my personal account, not our joint finances, but his demands increased. Then he threatened Noah directly, said he'd take him away where I'd never find him. You could have come to me, Maxwell said, anger giving way to hurt. We could have handled this together. Instead, you let me believe you were dead. Catherine wiped tears from her cheeks. Victor said he had evidence that would convince authorities he was Noah's father, DNA samples, old photographs. He claimed his new girlfriend was a social worker who could help him get custody. I panicked, Max. I couldn't risk Noah. So you abandoned me instead. I thought it was the only way to keep everyone safe. If I was dead, Victor would have no reason to target you. Noah and I could disappear completely. Start over where he couldn't find us. She looked up at him pleadingly. I never expected you to find me. Maxwell's mind raced through the implications. The girl, Abby. Did you arrange for her to approach me at the cemetery? Catherine looked genuinely confused. What girl? Abby Martinez. She sells candy in the park near your apartment. She's the one who told me she'd seen you. Catherine's face paled. I know Abby. I buy candy from her sometimes, but I never told her who I really was. She recognized me from a newspaper photo, made the connection. Oh God. Catherine pressed a hand to her mouth. That means Victor might have made the connection too. He's been watching us. Maxwell recalled Abby's warning about the man with the dog. Victor Sullivan? Burns on his right hand. German Shepherd. Catherine stared at him in shock. How do you know that? I've had my security team looking into him since yesterday. He has a history of domestic violence complaints. That's why I had to leave, Max, Catherine said urgently. You don't understand what he's capable of. When I was 7 months pregnant, he pushed me down a flight of stairs because I talked to a male cashier for too long. I spent a week in the hospital. The doctors told me I was lucky Noah survived. The revelation stunned Maxwell into silence. The idea of Catherine, his confident, strong-willed Catherine, living in such fear was incomprehensible. Does the boy know about me? He finally asked. Catherine shook her head. I told him his father died before he was born. It seemed easier than explaining the truth. The truth being that you've been lying to everyone in your life, Maxwell said, bitterness creeping back into his tone. Catherine didn't deny it. I've made so many mistakes, Max, but everything I did was to protect Noah. Not everything, Maxwell corrected. You didn't have to let me mourn you. You didn't have to let me spend a year talking to an empty grave. She had no answer for that. Maxwell stood, needing distance. I want to meet him, Noah, properly. That's not a good idea, Catherine said quickly. He doesn't know anything about this situation. It would confuse and frighten him. I deserve to know the child you chose over our marriage. Catherine flinched. It wasn't like that. What was it like then? Explain it to me, Catherine. Make me understand how you could look me in the eyes every day for 19 years and never once mention you had a son. How you could watch me grieve our inability to have children together and never tell me there was a child out there who was part of you. Tears flowed freely down Catherine's face now. I wanted to tell you so many times, but the longer I kept the secret, the harder it became to imagine your reaction. Then when Victor found us, I panicked. I've made a terrible choice, Max, I know that now. Maxwell's phone vibrated in his pocket. It was Ray. Sullivan is on the move, his security chief reported without preamble. He just entered Oakwood Heights with what appears to be a key to the main entrance. Should I intervene? The blood drained from Maxwell's face. Noah, he said aloud. Catherine looked up sharply. What about Noah? Victor is at your apartment building right now. Catherine bolted to her feet, pure terror on her face. Mrs. Cooper from 3A is watching him. I need to get back there now. Maxwell grabbed her arm. We'll take my car. It's faster. They ran to the navigator, Catherine stumbling in her waitress shoes. Maxwell drove recklessly through the empty streets, breaking speed limits and running red lights. Catherine clutched the dashboard, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Call the police, Maxwell instructed, tossing her his phone. I can't, she said, voice cracking. If they run my ID, they'll discover Ellen Lewis doesn't exist. If they connect me to Catherine Reed, the insurance fraud will send me to prison. Noah would end up in foster care or worse with Victor. Maxwell cursed under his breath as they screeched to a halt outside Oakwood Heights. Catherine was out of the car before it fully stopped, running toward the building entrance. Maxwell was close behind, his heart pounding with fear for a child he had never met. Catherine fumbled with her keys at the building entrance, her hands trembling violently. Maxwell gently took them from her and unlocked the door. The dingy hallway was empty, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Third floor, Catherine whispered, rushing toward the stairwell. Maxwell followed, taking the stairs 2 at a time. As they reached the third-floor landing, they heard a child's cry. Catherine broke into a run, her waitress shoes skidding on the worn linoleum. Apartment 3A's door stood ajar. Maxwell caught up to Catherine just as she pushed it open. Inside, a gray-haired woman in a bathrobe was attempting to comfort Noah, who stood with tears streaming down his face. There was no sign of Victor. Mrs. Cooper, what happened? Catherine rushed to Noah, gathering him into her arms. Ellen, thank goodness you're back early, Mrs. Cooper said, clearly distressed. Some man came by claiming to be Noah's uncle. Said you'd been in an accident and sent him to collect the boy. I didn't believe him. You never mentioned any brother. When I refused to let Noah go, he got nasty, threatened to call child services, said you were an unfit mother. Noah buried his face in Catherine's shoulder, his small body shaking with sobs. He said he was my real dad, the boy whispered. He knew my name. Maxwell stood in the doorway, taking in the scene. Noah had Catherine's eyes, the distinctive Reed family trait that had passed through generations. But his dark hair and the set of his jaw reminded Maxwell of the man in the cemetery, watching them from a distance. Did he hurt you? Catherine asked, checking Noah for injuries. The boy shook his head. Mrs. Cooper told him to leave or she'd call the police. He said he'd be back. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Catherine looked up at her neighbor. Thank you, Evelyn. I don't know how to repay you. Mrs. Cooper's gaze shifted to Maxwell, suspicion evident in her expression. And who's this? Before Catherine could answer, Maxwell stepped forward. Maxwell Reed, I'm a friend of Ellen's. I gave her a ride home when we heard there might be trouble. Mrs. Cooper didn't appear convinced, but she nodded. Well, you'd better get that boy home and lock your doors. That man said he wasn't leaving until he got what was his. Catherine thanked her again, then hurried Noah across the hall to their apartment. Maxwell followed, taking in the stark contrast to the luxury home they had once shared. The one-bedroom apartment was clean but sparse, a futon sofa that clearly doubled as Catherine's bed, a small table with mismatched chairs, walls painted in cheap institutional beige. Noah's area had been created with hanging sheets to partition off a corner of the living room, providing him with a semblance of privacy. "Pack some clothes," Catherine instructed Noah, "and Rocket Bear, we need to go away for a little while." The boy's eyes widened in fear. "Because of that man?" "Yes, sweetheart. Just for safety." Catherine turned to Maxwell, her voice dropping. "We can't stay here. He knows where we live now." Maxwell nodded. "I'll take you to my house in Beacon Hill. It has a security system and my team can monitor the property." Catherine hesitated, then nodded. "Let me get our things." While she rushed around gathering essentials, Maxwell crouched down to Noah's level. The boy regarded him warily. "Hello, Noah, I'm Max. Are you really Mom's friend?" The child's perception was sharp, his tone suggesting he doubted the hastily crafted explanation. "I've known your mother for a very long time," Maxwell said carefully. "I want to help keep you both safe." Noah studied him with Catherine's eyes. "The bad man said he was my real dad, but Mom told me my dad died before I was born." Maxwell chose his words with caution. "Sometimes adults tell stories to protect children. Your mother loves you very much. That's all that matters right now." Catherine returned with a duffel bag and Noah's backpack. "We're ready." The drive to Beacon Hill was tense and silent. Noah eventually fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the emotional turmoil. Catherine stared out the window, occasionally wiping away tears. "He found us because of me," Maxwell finally said. "My visit to your apartment led him to you." Catherine shook her head. "He was watching already. Abby mentioned seeing him in the park, remember? It was only a matter of time." They arrived at Maxwell's mansion just before dawn. The imposing brick townhouse with its manicured garden stood in stark contrast to the dilapidated apartment they'd left behind. Catherine gently woke Noah, who stared in wonder at the ornate front door and gleaming hardwood floors. "Is this a hotel?" the boy whispered. "No, it's Mr. Reed's home," Catherine explained. "We'll be staying here for a little while." Maxwell showed them to the guest suite, a bedroom with an adjoining sitting room that could serve as Noah's space. The boy's eyes widened at the king-sized bed and television mounted on the wall. "Try to get some sleep," Maxwell told them. "We'll figure out our next steps in the morning. The security system is armed. You're safe here." Once Noah was settled, Catherine followed Maxwell into the hallway. "I'm sorry," she said, voice breaking, "for everything. This isn't how I wanted you to find out." "Did you ever plan for me to find out?" Maxwell asked, the hurt still raw. Catherine looked away. "I don't know. I thought about contacting you so many times this past year. But I was afraid. Afraid of your anger, afraid of the legal consequences, afraid of exposing Noah to more danger." "We need to talk about what happens next," Maxwell said. "But not tonight. You both need rest." Catherine nodded, then hesitated. "Max, thank you. Despite everything, you're still helping us." Maxwell didn't reply. The gratitude felt hollow in the face of her deception. Instead, he turned and walked to his study, where he poured himself a generous measure of scotch and called Ray. Sullivan left the apartment building shortly after Mrs. Reed and the boy departed, Ray reported. He appeared agitated, made a call from a payphone on Westland Avenue. "We're monitoring the situation. Increase security at the house," Maxwell instructed, "and I need a complete background check on Victor Sullivan. Everything you can find." After ending the call, Maxwell slumped in his leather chair, emotionally drained. The photograph on his desk, Catherine on their anniversary trip to Nantucket, seemed to mock him now. 19 years of marriage, and he had never truly known his wife. Morning arrived too quickly. Maxwell had fallen asleep in his study, the empty Scotch glass still clutched in his hand. He awoke to the sound of hushed voices and the smell of coffee. Following the sounds to the kitchen, he found Noah perched on a stool at the counter, watching in fascination as Diana, Maxwell's housekeeper, prepared pancakes. "Good morning." "Mr. Reed," Diana greeted him, her expression carefully neutral. Maxwell had called her the night before to explain they would have guests. though he'd provided no details about Catherine's identity. "Where's Ellen?" Maxwell asked, using the name for Noah's benefit. "Still sleeping," Diana replied. "This young man was hungry, so I offered breakfast." Noah glanced up at Maxwell uncertainly. "Your house is really big, and you have a robot vacuum cleaner." Despite everything, Maxwell felt a smile tug at his lips. "Do you like robots?" Noah nodded enthusiastically. "I want to build them someday. Mom bought me a book about engineering from the thrift store." The casual mention of Catherine's struggle to provide for her son's interests stung Maxwell anew. While he had been living in luxury, grieving his dead wife, she had been scraping by in poverty, working night shifts and shopping at thrift stores to support their child, a child she had hidden from him. Catherine appeared in the doorway, her hair wet from the shower, wearing the same clothes as yesterday. She froze when she saw Maxwell and Noah together. "Good morning," she said cautiously. Noah brightened. "Mom, Mr. Reed has a robot vacuum, and Ms. Diana is making pancakes with blueberries." Catherine attempted a smile. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Maxwell could see the strain behind her expression. "Diana, could you show Noah the garden after breakfast? There's a koi pond he might enjoy." Diana nodded, understanding the need for adult conversation. "Of course, and I've put fresh towels and some clothes in your room. Miss Ellen, they might be a bit big, but they're clean." "Thank you," Catherine murmured. Once Noah was happily exploring the garden under Diana's supervision, Maxwell led Catherine to his study. The room was a testament to their shared past. Bookshelves lined with volumes they had read together, photographs from vacations they had taken, even the antique desk lamp Catherine had given him for their 10th anniversary. "Ray confirmed Sullivan was at your apartment last night," Maxwell began without preamble. "He's having him followed. We need to decide our next steps." Catherine sank into a chair. "I don't know what to do, Max. Running clearly didn't solve anything. He found us once. He'll find us again." "Tell me everything about him," Maxwell insisted. "Everything you've been hiding all these years?" Catherine's story unfolded slowly, painfully. She had met Victor Sullivan in college, a charming, ambitious law student who had quickly become possessive. The relationship turned abusive after she moved in with him. When she discovered her pregnancy, she initially saw it as a reason to make the relationship work, but Victor's violence escalated. After the incident on the stairs that nearly cost her and Noah's lives, Catherine had fled in the night, leaving everything behind. "I was terrified he would find us," she explained. "I changed my name, moved to another state, created a new identity. When I met you 2 years later, I thought I was finally safe. I never planned to fall in love with you, Max. But I did, and every day I wanted to tell you about Noah. But I was afraid. Afraid you wouldn't want a woman with a hidden child, afraid Victor would somehow trace me through you." "So you kept Noah a secret," Maxwell said. "Where was he all those years?" "Just here, with my cousin Laura in Chicago. She raised him as her own. I visited when I could, told you I was visiting an old college friend. It was getting harder as Noah grew older. He started asking questions, wanting to know why he couldn't live with me. And then Victor found you." Catherine nodded miserably. "Last year Laura passed away. I had no choice but to bring Noah home. I told you I was helping Laura's family with funeral arrangements, but I was actually setting up a new identity for Noah. Victor must have been watching Laura's house. 3 weeks after Noah came to live with me, Victor approached me outside Reed Technologies when I was leaving work. He said he wanted money, or he'd take Noah and expose me." Maxwell struggled to reconcile this narrative with the life they had shared. "All those nights you worked late at the foundation." "I was with Noah," Catherine admitted. "I rented a small apartment across town where he could stay until I figured out what to do. I was trapped, Max. If I told you about Victor, I'd have to reveal years of lies. If I paid Victor, he'd never stop demanding more. If I went to the police, they might give Noah to Victor as his biological father. So you chose to die instead." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "Dr. Marsh at the cancer center helped me. She knew about my situation from my volunteer work. When Patricia agreed to help, it seemed like the only solution. I could disappear with Noah, and you would be safe from Victor's threats." Maxwell's phone rang, interrupting the painful conversation. It was Ray again. "Sir, Sullivan just checked into the Harbor View Hotel. He's made several calls and appears to be meeting someone this afternoon." Also, the DNA results you requested are complete. They confirm a maternal relationship between Mrs. Reed and the boy. Not that Maxwell had doubted it, the resemblance was undeniable. He thanked Ray and ended the call. Victor's in Boston, he told Catherine, staying at Harborview. Fresh fear washed over her face. He's not going to stop, Max, not until he gets what he wants. Which is what, exactly? Money, Noah? Power, Catherine said softly. Control over me. He can't stand that I escaped him. The money is just an excuse. Maxwell stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where Noah was carefully feeding the koi fish, Diana standing nearby. The boy laughed as the colorful fish swarmed toward the food, his face lighting up with joy. He looks happy, Maxwell observed. Catherine joined him at the window. He's resilient, but he deserves better than a life on the run, always looking over his shoulder. Maxwell turned to face her. Then we stop running. We face this together. Catherine looked up at him, hope and doubt warring in her expression. Together? After everything I've done? I'm furious with you, Catherine. You lied to me for our entire relationship. You let me grieve you, bury you, mourn you. That betrayal won't heal quickly. Maxwell's voice was firm but without the earlier bitterness. But I won't let Victor Sullivan terrorize you or Noah any longer. For the first time since their reunion, Catherine's shoulders straightened, a glimpse of her former strength returning. What's your plan? So first, we need legal counsel. Michael Fernandez is coming over this afternoon. Then we deal with Sullivan, on our terms, not his. As if summoned by their conversation, Diana appeared at the study door. Sister Reed, there's a young girl at the gate. Says her name is Abby Martinez. She claims it's urgent. Abby Martinez stood in Maxwell's foyer, her oversized jacket dripping rainwater onto the marble floor. Her face was flushed from exertion, and her dark eyes darted anxiously between Maxwell and Catherine. The man with the dog, she said without preamble. He came to my house asking questions about you both. Showed me a picture of Noah. Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. Did he threaten you? Not exactly, Abby replied. He said he'd pay me $50 if I told him where you went. I said I didn't know. Maxwell crouched down to Abby's level. How did you find us? I followed your car yesterday. Memorize the address. She shrugged at Maxwell's surprised expression. I'm good at remembering things. Have to be selling candy in different neighborhoods. Where's your grandmother? Catherine asked. At the hospital. The doctors you sent, Mr. Reed, they're doing tests. Abby's attention shifted to Noah, who had appeared in the hallway, curious about the new arrival. Hey, Noah! The boy brightened. Abby! You sell the strawberry candies Mum likes. Abby nodded, then turned back to the adults. The man, he left something at our door this morning. A note. She pulled a crumpled paper from her pocket and handed it to Catherine. Catherine unfolded it, her hand trembling. Tell Ellen I want what's mine. She knows my terms. Midnight tonight at the old pier, or I go to the police with everything I know. Maxwell took the note, studying the handwriting. He's using Abby to send messages now. This needs to end. Diana appeared with a tray of hot chocolate. Perhaps the children should have something warm to drink in the kitchen while you adults talk. Maxwell nodded gratefully. Good idea. Noah, why don't you show Abby the robot vacuum you were telling me about? Once the children were out of earshot, Catherine collapsed onto a chair. He's escalating, Max, using Abby, threatening to go to the police. What does he expect me to do? Meet his demands, most likely, Maxwell replied grimly. Money, probably, and access to Noah. Catherine shook her head vehemently. I'll never let him near Noah again. Not after what he did to us. The doorbell rang, announcing Michael Fernandez's arrival. The attorney entered, his normally composed demeanor slipping when he saw Catherine. My God, he whispered. It's really you. Catherine managed a weak smile. Hello, Michael. Maxwell quickly explained the situation, including Victor Sullivan's latest threats. Michael listened without interrupting, his legal mind visibly processing each new piece of information. This is complex, he finally said. Catherine, by faking your death, you've committed insurance fraud, identity theft, potentially obstruction of justice. The insurance company paid out $3 million on your life policy. I never saw that money, Catherine protested. It all went to Max, who hadn't cashed it, Maxwell added. It's still sitting in a separate account. I couldn't bring myself to use it. Michael nodded. That's fortunate. It means we can return it with interest. which might reduce the legal consequences. But there's still the matter of using another woman's body to fake your death. Patricia was already gone, Catherine said softly. Terminal cancer. She had days left. She agreed to help me because she had no family, no legacy. She said helping me would give meaning to her death. Even so, falsifying medical records, death certificates, these are serious offenses, Michael warned. And then there's the matter of Noah's custody. Sullivan is his biological father. He could make a legal claim. He's an abuser, Catherine said fiercely. I have hospital records from when he pushed me down the stairs. I was 7 months pregnant, which would certainly help your case, Michael acknowledged. But you've also been living under a false identity for a year, which doesn't look good in family court. Maxwell, who had been quiet during this exchange, finally spoke. What if we approach this differently? Instead of reacting to Sullivan's threats, we take control of the narrative. Both Catherine and Michael turned to him questioningly. Catherine returns from the dead publicly, Maxwell elaborated. We go to the authorities with a compelling story. A woman in fear for her life and her child's, forced to take desperate measures. We return the insurance money, make a public apology, and throw ourselves on the mercy of the system. That's incredibly risky, Michael cautioned. Catherine could face jail time. But it would neutralize Sullivan's leverage, Maxwell pointed out. He can't threaten to expose what we've already revealed. Catherine considered the proposal, her expression thoughtful. What about Noah? If I go to jail, who takes care of him? I would, Maxwell said without hesitation. He's your son. That makes him my responsibility too. Catherine's eyes filled with tears at the unexpected offer. You'd do that? After everything? I'm still furious with you, Maxwell said honestly. The trust between us is broken, but Noah is innocent in all this. He shouldn't suffer for our mistakes. The conversation was interrupted by Diana, who appeared at the doorway with an urgent expression. Mr. Reed, the security system detected someone at the back gate. The cameras show a man with a German shepherd. Maxwell's jaw tightened. Sullivan, he must have followed Abby. The children, Catherine gasped, rushing toward the kitchen. Maxwell activated the house's security protocols from his phone while Michael called the police. Diana locked down the property. Steel shutters descended over windows, and reinforced bolts engaged on all exterior doors, a feature Maxwell had installed after a series of corporate espionage attempts years ago. In the kitchen, they found Abby and Noah huddled together, sensing the sudden tension. What's happening? Noah asked, his voice small. Catherine knelt before him. Remember the man from last night? He's outside, but he can't get in. This house has special protections. Noah's eyes widened. Like a fortress? Exactly like a fortress, Maxwell confirmed, checking the security feed on his tablet. Sullivan was circling the property, testing gates and peering through shrubs. The police are on their way. He'll be gone soon. But minutes passed and Sullivan remained. The police call had been logged as a low-priority trespassing complaint. Response time estimated at 30 minutes or more. Sullivan seemed to know this, unhurried in his examination of the property. He's looking for weaknesses, Ray observed. Having arrived through the underground garage entrance that connected to the neighboring property Maxwell also owned. Testing our defenses, Maxwell turned to Catherine. This is your chance to end it. Go out there and confront him. Tell him you're going public with everything. Are you insane? Catherine stared at him in disbelief. He's dangerous. He's also a coward, Maxwell countered. Ray and I will be right behind you. This property has cameras everywhere. If he makes a single threatening move, we'll have it on record. Catherine hesitated, torn between fear and the desire to end the nightmare once and for all. Mom? Noah's voice was quiet but steady. Is that my real dad out there? The question hung heavy in the air. Catherine crouched to Noah's level. Yes, sweetheart, biologically he is. But he's not a good man. He hurt me very badly when you were still in my tummy. Is that why you told me he was gone? Noah asked. Catherine nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I was trying to protect you. I was afraid. Noah considered this with a solemnity beyond his years. Then he looked up at Maxwell. Are you going to help us? Yes, Maxwell promised without hesitation. I'm going to help you and your mother. Noah nodded, then turned back to Catherine. You should go talk to him, Mom. You always tell me running away doesn't solve problems. Catherine looked stricken, caught by her own parenting advice. She glanced at Abby, who had been watching the exchange with quiet intensity. "He's not going to stop," Abby said matter-of-factly. "Men like that never do. My dad was the same way with my mom. That's why she left." The simple wisdom from the two children seemed to strengthen Catherine's resolve. She straightened her shoulders and nodded. "You're right, but the children stay inside with Diana." "Agreed," Maxwell said. "Ray, Michael, and I will be with you the entire time." The confrontation was staged in the front garden, where multiple security cameras could capture every moment. Catherine stood on the front steps, flanked by Maxwell and Ray, with Michael hanging back slightly. Sullivan was escorted to the front gate by the private security team Maxwell had called in as additional protection. Victor Sullivan was a handsome man in his late 40s, with sharp features and calculating eyes. The German shepherd sat obediently at his side, watchful but not aggressive. "Elizabeth," Sullivan called, using Catherine's original name. "You're looking well for a dead woman." Catherine's voice was steadier than Maxwell had expected. "What do you want, Victor?" "What's rightfully mine," Sullivan replied coolly. "My son, and compensation for 9 years of denied fatherhood." "You forfeited any right to Noah when you pushed me down those stairs," Catherine shot back. "I have the hospital records, the police report I was too afraid to file at the time. I'm not afraid anymore." Sullivan's smile didn't reach his eyes. Bold words from a woman who committed insurance fraud, identity theft, and who knows what else to escape me. "How do you think the authorities will view a mother who faked her death and denied a father access to his child?" "We're going to find out," Maxwell interjected. "Catherine is turning herself in tomorrow morning. Full confession, full accounting of her actions, including your history of abuse and current attempts at extortion." Sullivan's confident demeanor faltered slightly. "You're bluffing. She'll go to prison." "Maybe," Catherine acknowledged. "But Noah will be with Max, not you. And when I get out, I'll have a restraining order against you backed by years of documented abuse." "You have nothing," Sullivan snarled, his charming facade cracking. "No proof that would stand up in court." Michael stepped forward, legal folder in hand. "Actually, we have quite a lot. Hospital records from Chicago Memorial, documenting Catherine's injuries from the fall. Witness statements from neighbors who heard your threats. And now footage of you trespassing and attempting extortion." Sullivan's face contorted with rage. "You think you've won? I'll destroy you all. I have friends in the system. People who owe me favors." "Record that, please," Michael said calmly to Ray, who confirmed the security cameras were capturing everything, threatening to abuse legal connections. "Very helpful." The wail of police sirens in the distance finally broke the standoff. Sullivan took a step back, visibly recalculating his position. "This isn't over," he promised, his voice low. "Not by a long shot." As the police car appeared at the end of the street, Sullivan turned and walked away, the German shepherd following faithfully. The officers arrived moments later, took statements about the trespassing incident, and promised to patrol the area more frequently. Inside, Catherine collapsed onto the sofa, the adrenaline leaving her system. "Do you really think turning myself in is the right move?" "It's the only move that takes away his power," Maxwell said. "As long as you're hiding, he has leverage over you. We need to change the game." "What about Noah?" Catherine asked, her voice breaking. "I can't bear the thought of being separated from him again." Maxwell sat beside her. "I meant what I said. I'll take care of him if it comes to that. But Michael will fight for leniency. Your cooperation, the extenuating circumstances, the abuse you suffered, it all factors in." Abby, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. "My grandma always says the truth sets you free. Even when it hurts." Catherine looked at the girl with wonder. "When did you get so wise, Abby Martinez?" The girl shrugged. "When you sell candy on street corners, you see how the world really works." The moment was interrupted by Noah, who came running in with excitement. "Mom, Mr. Reed has a boat. Diana showed me pictures. Can we go there instead of staying here?" Maxwell exchanged glances with Catherine. "My summer house on the Cape. It's more isolated than here, with better security." "The coastal house," Catherine murmured, remembering vacations spent there during happier times. "It might be wise to relocate while we prepare Catherine's statement," Michael suggested. "Sullivan knows this address now. What about Grandma?" Abby asked. "She's supposed to come home from the hospital tomorrow." "She'll come with us," Maxwell decided. "The Cape House has plenty of room, and the sea air would be good for her recovery. The plan was set in motion with remarkable efficiency. Ray arranged for secure transport. Diana prepared provisions. Michael gathered legal documents for Catherine's voluntary surrender, scheduled for 3 days later to allow time for proper preparation. As evening fell, Maxwell found Catherine in his study, looking at photographs of their life together. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said without turning around, "but I want you to know that my love for you was never a lie. It was the truest thing in my life." Maxwell stood beside her, studying the same photographs. "I believe that, but it doesn't erase the pain or the betrayal." "I know." Catherine set down the frame she had been holding, their wedding portrait. "For what it's worth, I've regretted my choice every day since I made it. Not just because it hurt you, but because it was wrong. I should have trusted you with the truth." "Yes, you should have," Maxwell agreed. "But that's the past now. We need to focus on what comes next." Catherine nodded. "Noah likes you. He doesn't warm up to people easily. He's a remarkable child. You've raised him well despite everything." A comfortable silence fell between them, not the easy intimacy they once shared, but not the cold tension of earlier either. "Progress, however small. We leave for the Cape at dawn," Maxwell finally said. "You should get some rest." As Catherine headed toward the guest suite, she paused at the door. "Max, thank you for helping us, even though you have every right to turn your back." Maxwell didn't respond immediately. The pain of her deception was still fresh, but seeing her with Noah had awakened something protective in him, a sense of purpose he had lost during his year of grieving. "I'm not doing it for you," he said finally. "I'm doing it because it's right." Catherine accepted this with a nod and continued down the hallway, leaving Maxwell alone with his thoughts and the photographs of a life that now seemed like a beautiful illusion. The Cape House stood like a sentinel on a rocky bluff overlooking the Atlantic, its weathered grey shingles and white trim, a quintessential New England coastal home. Though not as grand as Maxwell's Boston mansion, the sprawling property offered something more valuable than luxury: isolation. The nearest neighbor was half a mile away, and a private road with a security gate provided the only access by land. As the convoy of vehicles pulled into the circular driveway, Catherine felt a wave of nostalgia. They had spent their anniversaries here, planning to retire to this peaceful sanctuary someday. Now she returned under very different circumstances, a fugitive preparing to surrender herself to justice. Noah pressed his face against the car window, eyes wide with wonder. "We're right next to the ocean." "Yes," Catherine smiled, grateful for his excitement. "You can hear the waves at night when you're falling asleep." Behind them, an ambulance transport carrying Maria Martinez followed carefully. The elderly woman had been reluctant to leave her home, but had finally agreed when Maxwell arranged for a nurse to accompany her. Abby rode with her grandmother, holding her hand throughout the journey. Maxwell emerged from the lead vehicle, conferring quietly with Ray before approaching Catherine's car. "Everything's secure. The house has been stocked with supplies for at least 2 weeks." Diana took charge of settling everyone into the spacious home. Noah and Abby were delighted to discover their rooms had views of the ocean, while Maria was installed in the ground floor guest suite that had once been modified for Maxwell's father during his illness. By afternoon, a strange domesticity had settled over the unlikely household. Maria rested in the sunroom, breathing in the salt air that seemed to ease her labored respiration. The children explored the private beach below the bluff, collecting shells under Ray's watchful eye. Maxwell worked remotely from his study, handling the business affairs he had neglected during the tumultuous days since discovering Catherine was alive. Catherine found herself in the kitchen with Diana, preparing dinner as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "He kept everything the same," Diana commented, as Catherine automatically reached for the drawer where the cooking utensils had always been kept. After you were gone. He wouldn't let anyone change a thing in any of the houses." Catherine's hand trembled as she removed a wooden spoon from the drawer. "I never wanted to hurt him, Diana. You have to believe that." The housekeeper's expression remained neutral. "It's not my place to judge, Mrs. Reed. Or should I call you Ellen now?" "Catherine is fine," she replied quietly. "I was never comfortable being Ellen. It never felt real." Diana nodded and continued chopping vegetables. "The boy is the spitting image of you. Same eyes. Reed family eyes," Catherine agreed. They go back generations in Maxwell's family. Noah has them too, even though Mr. Reed isn't his biological father, Diana finished matter-of-factly. Children are blessings regardless of where they come from. My own grandson is adopted. The simple acceptance in Diana's voice brought tears to Catherine's eyes. Thank you, she whispered. From the expansive windows, Catherine could see Noah and Abby flying a kite on the beach, their laughter occasionally carrying up to the house. They had formed an instant friendship, both children accustomed to adult responsibilities, beyond their years finding joy in simple play. Michael Fernandez arrived just before dinner, bringing a briefcase full of documents and a grave expression. He joined Maxwell in the study while Catherine finished preparing the meal. When everyone gathered around the large dining table that evening, the scene was surreal, a collection of people from vastly different worlds brought together by extraordinary circumstances. Maxwell sat at the head of the table, with Noah and Abby to his right, Maria and the nurse to his left, and Catherine at the opposite end. Michael and Ray completed the unusual gathering. "This is better than Thanksgiving at our apartment," Noah declared, helping himself to a second serving of roasted potatoes. "We never have this much food." Catherine felt a flush of embarrassment at this innocent revelation of their financial struggles, but Maxwell simply passed the boy the gravy boat. "There's apple pie for dessert," he told Noah. "Diana makes the best in Massachusetts." "Can we eat it on the beach?" Abby asked. "We could have a fire in that stone circle." "A bonfire sounds wonderful," Maxwell agreed, surprising Catherine with his easy accommodation of the children's wishes. After dinner, as promised, they all gathered on the beach. Ray built a fire in the stone pit, while Maxwell brought blankets for Maria, who insisted on joining them despite her frailty. The nurse hovered nearby, monitoring her oxygen levels discreetly. The children roasted marshmallows, giggling as the treats occasionally caught fire. Maria told stories of her youth in Puerto Rico, her accent growing stronger with each tale. For a few precious hours, the specter of Victor Sullivan and Catherine's impending legal reckoning seemed distant. As the children's energy finally began to wane, the adults exchanged glances. It was time for the conversation they had been postponing. "Abby, why don't you and Noah help Mrs. Martinez back to the house?" Catherine suggested gently. "It's getting chilly and you both need showers before bed." Once the children were out of earshot, Michael opened his briefcase and removed several folders. "I've prepared your statement," he told Catherine. "It acknowledges the fraud, but emphasizes the extenuating circumstances, the documented abuse, the threats to Noah's safety, your fear for Maxwell's well-being." Catherine took the document with trembling hands. "What are we looking at in terms of consequences?" Michael sighed. "It's complicated. Insurance fraud of this magnitude typically carries a sentence of 5 to 10 years. However, given the circumstances and your voluntary surrender, we could argue for a reduced sentence, possibly even probation." "Probation?" Catherine looked up sharply. "You think that's possible?" "I've spoken with Judge Caroline Wilson," Maxwell interjected. "She sits on the federal bench and has been a strong advocate for abuse victims. She believes your case might be better served in her courtroom than in a criminal proceeding." Hope flickered in Catherine's eyes. "How would that work?" "You'd still face charges," Michael explained, "but with a sympathetic judge willing to consider the extraordinary circumstances, we might negotiate a plea that includes restitution, community service, and probation rather than incarceration." "What about Noah's custody?" Catherine asked, the question that concerned her most. "That's more challenging," Michael admitted. "Sullivan is the biological father. He has rights under the law regardless of his past behavior." "Rights?" Catherine's voice rose in disbelief. "He nearly killed us both, which is why we filed for an emergency restraining order," Michael assured her. "The hospital records from Chicago will help substantiate the abuse claims, but we need to be prepared for a custody battle." Ray, who had been quietly tending the fire, suddenly stood. "Someone's coming." All heads turned toward the private path that led down to the beach from the house. A figure approached in the darkness, too small to be Sullivan. "It's Diana," Maxwell said, relaxing slightly as the housekeeper came into view. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Diana said, slightly breathless from the steep descent, "but there's something you all should see. A delivery came while we were at dinner. I only just found it." She handed Maxwell a padded envelope. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. Insurance policy. Use if necessary. A friend. Maxwell frowned. What is this? I don't know, sir, Diana replied. It was left at the service entrance. The security cameras didn't catch anyone. They returned to the house, tension replacing the evening's brief harmony. In Maxwell's study, he inserted the USB drive into his laptop, scanning it for viruses before opening the contents. Her single video file appeared on the screen. The footage showed Victor Sullivan in what appeared to be a hotel room, arguing heatedly with a woman whose face wasn't visible. The audio was poor, but Sullivan's words were clear enough. I don't care about the boy. This is about the money. Once we have it, you can have custody. The unseen woman replied something inaudible, to which Sullivan responded, Elizabeth Reed is worth millions. Her husband will pay anything to keep her out of prison. We just need to push harder. Catherine sank into a chair, her face pale. He doesn't even want Noah, he's just using him as leverage. Who sent this? Ray wondered aloud. And how did they know to deliver it here? Maxwell replayed the video, studying the background details. That's the Harbor View Hotel. This was recorded recently. The woman must be his accomplice, Michael observed. Perhaps she had a change of heart. The mystery remained unsolved, but the video's implications were clear. Sullivan's interest was financial, not paternal. This evidence would be invaluable in the custody proceedings. Later that night, unable to sleep, Catherine wandered onto the deck overlooking the ocean. The rhythmic crashing of waves against the rocks below had always soothed her. She was surprised to find Maxwell already there, nursing a glass of scotch. I thought you'd be asleep, she said, hesitating at the doorway. Too much on my mind, he replied, not turning to look at her. Catherine moved to stand at the railing, maintaining a respectful distance. Noah asked me if we were going to live here forever. He's already attached to this place. To you too, I think. Maxwell swirled the amber liquid in his glass. He's a good kid, smart, observant. Like you, Catherine said softly. He has your analytical mind, even without the genetic connection. The comment hung in the air between them, neither acknowledgement nor denial forthcoming from Maxwell. I keep wondering, he finally said, how different things might have been if you'd told me about him from the beginning. Catherine gazed out at the moonlit water. I've wondered that too, every day for 9 years. And I think I was a coward, she admitted. I told myself I was protecting Noah, protecting you, but I was really protecting myself. From rejection, from judgment, from having to face my mistakes. Maxwell finished his scotch and set the glass down on the railing. I would have loved him, you know. From the first moment, because he's part of you. The simple truth of this statement brought tears to Catherine's eyes. I know that now. I didn't then. Victor had convinced me that no man would accept another man's child. That I was damaged goods. That's what abusers do, Maxwell said, his voice hardening. They isolate. They diminish. They distort reality until their victims can't trust their own judgment. Catherine turned to face him fully. When did you become so knowledgeable about abuse? Sight after you. Tied, Maxwell replied, finally meeting her gaze. I needed to understand why someone would drive off a cliff. I thought you had taken your own life, that I had missed signs of depression. I read everything I could find about domestic violence, suicide prevention, trauma. I donated millions to women's shelters in your memory. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Maxwell's grief had led him to support precisely the resources that might have helped Catherine to escape Victor without resorting to such desperate measures. I'm sorry, Catherine whispered, the inadequate words all she had to offer. For everything. Maxwell didn't respond directly. Instead, he said, I had Diana prepare the East Wing bedroom for you. It has a connecting door to Noah's room in case he needs you during the night. The thoughtful consideration for her son's comfort was yet another reminder of the man she had betrayed. Catherine nodded gratefully. Thank you. Good night, Max. As she turned to leave, Maxwell's voice stopped her. Catherine? That video changes things. We need to rethink our strategy. What do you mean? Sullivan isn't after Noah, he's after money, my money. And he's willing to use both of you to get it. Maxwell's expression was resolute. We might be able to use that against him. Before Catherine could ask for clarification, the The sound of breaking glass echoed from inside the house, followed by Abby's frightened scream. They rushed inside to find the kitchen window shattered, a brick lying on the floor surrounded by glass shards. Wrapped around the brick was a note, "Midnight tomorrow. The old boathouse. Bring 5 million or the boy goes with me. Come alone." Ray appeared from the hallway, gun drawn. The perimeter alarms didn't trigger. He must have come by water. Maxwell's face hardened as he read the note. "He's here, on my property." Threatening a child? Catherine clutched the doorframe, her knees weak with fear. "He knows where we are. We're not safe here." "Yes, we are," Maxwell assured her, his voice deadly calm, "because now he's on my territory, playing by my rules." "What are you going to do?" Catherine asked, recognizing the determined set of his jaw. Maxwell carefully folded the note and placed it in his pocket. "I'm going to give Sullivan exactly what he's asking for. A meeting. Midnight tomorrow. At the old boathouse." "Max, no," Catherine protested. "It's too dangerous." "Not for me," Maxwell replied. "For him." The confidence in his voice was unwavering, and for the first time since their reunion, Catherine saw not the betrayed husband, but the formidable businessman whose strategic brilliance had built Reed Technologies into a powerhouse. "I won't let him threaten our family any longer," Maxwell declared, the inclusive pronoun not lost on Catherine. In the shadowed hallway, Noah stood listening, his young face set in an expression far too serious for a 9-year-old. Beside him, Abby squeezed his hand reassuringly, both children witnessing the adults in their lives preparing for battle. The day unfolded with military precision, Maxwell transforming from grieving husband to strategic commander. Ray assembled a security team that arrived discreetly by boat, professionals with backgrounds in law enforcement and military service, who established surveillance around the property. Michael worked the legal angles, securing emergency court orders based on Sullivan's escalating threats. Diana ensured the children and Maria remained comfortable, distracting them with board games and baking projects. Catherine watched it all with a mixture of awe and guilt. This was the man she had abandoned, whose resources and determination she had underestimated. The man who, despite her betrayal, was now marshalling an army to protect her and Noah. By mid-afternoon, Maxwell called everyone to the dining room, which had been transformed into an operations center. Maps of the property were spread across the table. Communication equipment hummed in the corner, and Ray's team members reported positions through wireless earpieces. "Sullivan expects me to come alone with $5 million, Maxwell explained, his voice calm and methodical. "He believes I'll risk everything to protect Catherine from legal consequences." "But you're not bringing money," Ray clarified. "Not in the way he expects," Maxwell confirmed. "Michael has arranged for federal agents to be positioned nearby. When Sullivan makes his explicit demands on record, they'll move in." Catherine frowned. "You're using yourself as bait." "It's the most efficient solution," Maxwell replied without emotion. "Sullivan wants to deal with me directly. That's exactly what he'll get." "It's too dangerous," Catherine protested. "He might be armed." "The property will be surrounded," Ray assured her. "Maxwell will be wearing a wire and a bulletproof vest. We'll have eyes on him the entire time." Catherine wasn't convinced. "Victor is unpredictable when he feels cornered. I've seen his rage firsthand." "Which is why we've prepared for every contingency," Maxwell said, "including this." He nodded to Michael, who handed Catherine a leather portfolio. Inside were legal documents, guardianship papers naming Maxwell as Noah's legal guardian in the event of Catherine's incapacity or absence. "Sign these," Maxwell instructed. "If something happens to you, Noah stays with me, not Sullivan." The gesture struck Catherine profoundly. Despite everything, Maxwell was ensuring Noah's protection. She signed without hesitation. "What can I do?" she asked, needing to be useful. "Stay with the children and Maria," Maxwell replied. "If anything goes wrong, Ray's team will evacuate you through the tunnel." Catherine blinked in surprise. "Tunnel?" "My father was paranoid about home invasions," Maxwell explained. "He built an escape passage from the wine cellar to a boat dock on the other side of the bluff. It hasn't been used in years, but Ray's team has verified it's still functional." As the group dispersed to their assigned positions, Noah appeared in the doorway, his young face solemn. "Are you going to fight the bad man?" Hugh asked Maxwell directly. Maxwell crouched to the boy's level. "I'm going to make sure he never bothers you or your mother again." Noah considered this with grave seriousness. Is he really my father? Biologically? Yes, Maxwell answered honestly. But biology is just science. Family is something different. Something you build through love and trust and showing up when it matters. The boy nodded as if confirming something he had already concluded. That's what Mom always says. That family isn't about blood. Your mother is a wise woman, Maxwell said, despite some poor decisions. Noah surprised everyone by throwing his arms around Maxwell's neck. Be careful, he whispered. I don't want to lose another dad. The simple declaration hit Maxwell with unexpected force. He returned the embrace briefly before standing, his professional demeanor slightly shaken. I'll be careful. I promise. As twilight descended over the property, the atmosphere grew tense. The old boathouse stood at the end of a wooden pier that extended into a small cove, separate from the main dock where boats were currently moored. Once used to store the Reed family's collection of sailboats, it had been largely abandoned after Maxwell's father passed away, too full of painful memories for Maxwell to maintain. At 11:30, Maxwell changed into dark clothing and allowed Ray to fit him with a wire and the promised protective vest. Catherine watched from the doorway of his bedroom, her face pale with worry. This plan is insane, she said for perhaps the dozenth time. Let me go instead. Victor wants me, not you. No, Maxwell replied firmly. You have a 9-year-old son who needs his mother. I'm the logical choice, and if something happens to you, Catherine challenged. What then? How am I supposed to live with that? Maxwell turned to face her fully. You managed to live with letting me think you were dead for a year. I'm sure you'll adapt. The sharp response silenced her momentarily. When she spoke again, her voice was soft but determined. I deserve that. But this isn't about us anymore, Max. It's about Noah and Abby and even Maria. They all depend on you now. Before Maxwell could respond, Ray interrupted. Movement on the western perimeter. Someone's approaching by water. Small craft. Running dark. The moment for discussion had passed. Maxwell gave final instructions to his team, then headed toward the wooden staircase that descended the bluff to the boathouse. Max, Catherine called after him. When he turned, she simply said, Come back to us. The night was clear but moonless, the stars providing minimal illumination as Maxwell made his way down to the boathouse. He carried a briefcase, not containing the demanded $5 million, but enough cash to appear convincing at first glance. His earpiece provided reassurance that Ray's team had positions surrounding the meeting point, while federal agents waited just beyond the property line. The old boathouse creaked in the wind, its weathered boards protesting against the sea breeze. Maxwell entered cautiously, the interior dark except for a small lantern that cast long shadows across the dusty floor. Sailboat equipment long unused hung on the walls, and the smell of salt and mildew permeated the space. Right on time, Mr. Reed. Victor Sullivan emerged from behind an old sailboat stored on blocks in the corner. He wore a dark jacket and held a pistol casually at his side, not pointed at Maxwell, but present as an unspoken threat. I've brought what you asked for, Maxwell said evenly, holding up the briefcase. Sullivan smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. I'm sure you have. Put it on that workbench and step back. Maxwell complied, positioning himself where the team would have the clearest view through the windows. This ends tonight, Sullivan. One payment, and you disappear from our lives permanently. That's the plan, Sullivan agreed smoothly. Though I'm curious, why did you come yourself? I expected you to send a lackey. This is between us, Maxwell replied. Man to man. Sullivan laughed, the sound hollow in the empty boathouse. There's nothing man to man about this situation, Reed. You married my woman, raised my son, lived in ignorance while Elizabeth built a life on lies. Catherine, Maxwell corrected automatically. Her name is Catherine Reed. Elizabeth Carter, Sullivan insisted. That's who she really is. The terrified little girl who ran away in the night, stealing my son from me. She belongs to me. Always has. Maxwell's disgust must have shown on his face because Sullivan smirked. Don't like hearing that, do you? That your precious wife was mine first? That every time you touched her, she was comparing you to me? Is that what this is about? Maxwell asked, deliberately provocative. Your wounded ego. Because she chose me over you? Sullivan's smile vanished. She didn't choose anyone. She ran. Like a coward. After you pushed her down a flight of stairs while she was carrying your child, Maxwell reminded him. Not exactly a romantic gesture. Accidents happen when people don't listen, Sullivan said dismissively. Elizabeth always needed a firm hand, something you clearly failed to provide, or she wouldn't have felt the need to fake her own death to escape your marriage. The calculated barb struck its target, but Maxwell maintained his composure. Let's focus on the present. You want money. I want you gone. Simple transaction. Sullivan approached the briefcase and flipped it open without taking his eyes off Maxwell. $5 million doesn't seem adequate compensation for 9 years of fatherhood denied. I think we can negotiate a more appropriate arrangement. This is a one-time offer, Maxwell said firmly. Take it and disappear or leave it and face the consequences. Sullivan's expression hardened. I don't think you understand your position, Reed. I hold all the cards here. If I go to the authorities with what I know about Elizabeth's fraud, she'll spend years in prison. Noah will come to me as his biological father, and you'll be left with nothing but an empty house and public humiliation. Maxwell allowed himself a small smile. Is that what you think? That you hold all the cards? Something in Maxwell's confidence made Sullivan hesitate. What game are you playing? No game, Maxwell assured him. Just making sure we have absolute clarity about your intentions. So to confirm, you're threatening to report Catherine unless I pay you $5 million, is that correct? For starters, Sullivan said, I think an ongoing arrangement would be more appropriate. A father deserves support for raising his son, after all. So this is explicit extortion, Maxwell clarified. And you're claiming you want custody of Noah? Sullivan's eyes narrowed suspiciously. You're being very precise with your language, Reed, almost as if... The realization dawned on him too late. Sullivan lunged forward, grabbing Maxwell's jacket and ripping open the buttons to reveal the wire. You bastard! The boathouse door burst open as Ray's team moved in. Federal agents, a voice commanded. Drop your weapon! Sullivan's face contorted with rage. He raised the pistol, aiming not at the advancing agents but at Maxwell. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. As Sullivan's finger tightened on the trigger, a small figure darted through the open door, launching herself at his legs with surprising force. Abby Martinez, all 50 pounds of determined child, had followed them to the boathouse. Sullivan stumbled, his shot going wide and splintering the wooden wall beside Maxwell's head. Within seconds, federal agents had him pinned to the ground, the gun kicked away, handcuffs secure around his wrists. You little brat, Sullivan snarled as Abby scrambled away from him. Maxwell scooped the girl up and carried her outside, heart pounding. What were you thinking? You could have been killed. Abby's eyes were wide but unrepentant. I followed you. I wanted to help. By nearly getting yourself shot, Maxwell demanded, still shaking from the close call. I heard what you said to Noah about family, Abby explained, her voice small but determined, about showing up when it matters. I wanted to show up for you guys. Maxwell was rendered speechless by the child's courage and loyalty. Before he could formulate a response, Catherine came running down the path, Noah close behind her despite explicit instructions to remain in the house. Abby! Catherine cried, reaching for the girl. We've been searching everywhere. I'm okay, Abby assured her. I helped catch the bad man. Catherine looked to Maxwell for explanation, but the federal agents were already escorting a handcuffed Sullivan past them toward waiting vehicles. Sullivan locked eyes with Catherine as he passed. This isn't over, Elizabeth, he threatened. I'll tell everyone what you did. How you lied. Catherine straightened her shoulders, one arm around Noah protectively. My name is Catherine Reed, and I'm not afraid of you anymore. Sullivan was led away, still hurling threats that grew fainter as the distance increased. Noah watched solemnly, then turned to Maxwell. Is it really over? He asked. Maxwell nodded. Yes, he can't hurt you anymore. The aftermath unfolded with unexpected grace. Sullivan's recorded threats provided leverage for a comprehensive legal resolution. In exchange for reduced charges on the extortion attempt, he signed away all parental rights to Noah and agreed to a permanent restraining order. He would serve time for the attempted assault and illegal possession of a firearm. Catherine's case proved more complex, but ultimately hopeful. Judge Caroline Wilson, as Maxwell had predicted, proved sympathetic to her extraordinary circumstances. With evidence of Sullivan's abuse and threatening behavior, Combined with Catherine's voluntary surrender and full cooperation, the judge offered a plea arrangement, full restitution of the insurance money, 3 years of probation, community service working with domestic violence survivors, and mandatory therapy. Most crucially, Catherine would not serve jail time. Noah would remain in her custody, with Maxwell granted legal guardianship rights as a safeguard against any future attempts by Sullivan to reclaim parental rights after his eventual release from prison. 1 month after the dramatic confrontation at the boathouse, the unlikely household gathered once more on the deck of the Cape House. Maria Martinez, significantly improved after successful heart surgery funded by Maxwell, sat in a comfortable chair watching the sunset. Abby and Noah played chess at a small table, their competitive banter bringing smiles to the adults' faces. Maxwell found Catherine at the railing, gazing out at the ocean. "Michael called," he said, joining her. "The paperwork is finalized. Sullivan's rights are permanently terminated. Noah is legally free of him forever." Catherine released a breath she felt she'd been holding for 9 years. "Thank you. For everything." "I didn't do it for you," Maxwell reminded her, though the words lacked their earlier bitterness. "I know," Catherine acknowledged. "You did it for Noah, and that means more to me than if you'd done it for my sake." They stood in companionable silence, watching the colors fade from the sky. Their relationship remained complicated, trust shattered, then partially rebuilt through crisis. Not husband and wife anymore, but something undefined yet meaningful. "What happens now?" Catherine finally asked. Maxwell considered the question. "Maria's doctors recommend the sea air for her continued recovery. Abby's enrolled in the local school for the fall. Noah's been asking about sailing lessons." Catherine turned to face him. "That's not what I meant." "I know," Maxwell said quietly, "but that's where we start. Day by day, building something new from the ashes of what was lost. Not for us, for them." He nodded toward the children. "A family," Catherine murmured. "Not defined by blood or legal documents. Defined by showing up when it matters," Maxwell finished, echoing his words to Noah. As if sensing they were talking about him, Noah looked up from the chess game and waved. Both adults waved back, united in their commitment to his future, if not yet reconciled with their past. "I'd like to stay," Catherine said softly. "Here, I mean. Not just for Noah, or because of the probation restrictions, but because this feels right, for all of us." Maxwell didn't answer immediately. The betrayal still hurt, the year of grief not easily forgotten. But watching Noah teach Abby a chess strategy he had learned from Maxwell himself, seeing Maria's health improve daily, feeling the gradual rebuilding of purpose in his own life, he recognized the gift hidden within the pain. "The East Wing is yours for as long as you need it," he finally replied. "The rest, we'll figure out as we go." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning, a foundation upon which something authentic could slowly be constructed. Not the perfect life they had appeared to have before, but something more honest, tested by fire and ultimately stronger. As twilight deepened into night, the impromptu family gathered around the fire pit on the beach, just as they had a month earlier. This time, however, there were no threatening notes, no impending confrontations, only marshmallows roasting, stories shared, and the tentative peace of new beginnings. Abby, ever observant, looked between the adults with satisfaction. "Grandma says sometimes families are born, and sometimes they're made. I think we made a pretty good one." "Out of the mouths of babes," Maria added with a knowing